Thank you. I'll be talking about some of the non-timber forest products and its relationship to GI and GS, agricultural system, which is more formalized. As I discussed earlier, there is this geographical indication system which protects the traditional way of production and try to add values in a very formalized way. There's two in Europe, which is more strict with, one is more strict with everything has to be within the site. The blue one, the geographical indication can be more loose. Part of it should be within the region, but not all processing or ingredient should be within the region. So there are two types, PDO and PGI in Europe. Japan only has one, GI, and part of it has to be within that area. This is something I already explained. You know, GI is a way of conserving these modus of production. And there are certain products. This is one I took from the Noto Peninsula. And the processed products tends to be traded at a higher value than the non-registered ones. But this is not a causal relationship because the high quality ones tend to get registered under GI. So it's not because they're registered under GI, but the ones that are registered under GI tended to be high quality, and as such, it tends to be traded at higher quality. I just briefly want to introduce, as the charcoal was mentioned in the tea ceremony. This is one of the first GIs in the Iwate prefecture, and it's highly the quality of the charcoal is very high, and they show it by sending this electricity and the purity of the carbon, so to speak, and they produce it in a specific traditional crane or kama in Japanese, kiln in English, and this is how they produce it, and this shows how these are being produced. So, and also it has an impact to forestry as he harvests these woods on his own. And there's the other one with urushi, and this had a big surge in the demand because now shrines and temples and other culturally important how do you call it? Culturally important sites or buildings or constructions should be renovated with a domestic national urushi instead of imported ones. So this is something we saw, but it's not something that you use as an end product. It's something that you basically use as a lacquer. So that's not something that you can actually just sell. You know, this is something that you put into the end product. But they went out for a GI. So these are the GI that we use in Japan. And I also think one of the areas where these GIs can be used is mushrooms. So but there's no case of mushroom yet with a GI system in Japan. But this is a Noto region, and then the population is getting very aged, old, like well, some of Professor Koyama showed in tea ceremony, people are getting older. So it's the case for rural areas, and it's very getting old. And this is something we already published, that we saw how these special mushrooms produced with not inside the building, but outside using natural logs were being produced. And of course, it's more labor intensive compared to the ones you can produce within the house or within the factory, and you have to turn it around. And so this is something we looked at, and what we identified, I'm not showing any graphs or figures, but what we identified in these articles that we wrote is that the traditional knowledge in the drying mushroom, which is a different variety, different production method, does not always help the changing to adapting to production of new varieties or new production modus. So we tend to automatically think that the traditional knowledge from one, let's say, mushroom production would actually help adapt when they want to create something that is more high value added or market oriented. This is not automatic, so we also have to be careful, not simply say, oh, these people have a traditional knowledge so they can produce it more effectively, or so it really depends on the context and how these knowledge will be transmitted. So sometimes newcomers with manualized knowledge with a new modus of production can adapt very well. So this was the case for, I think, Temari, which is a new variety introduced into the region, which, yeah, so that's what we found out. The other case we looked at is GIAS, globally important agricultural heritage systems in Kunisaki, which is in Kyushu. This is another mushroom areas, and here I think the use of the land. This used to be actually a rice paddy field, but they converted it to a place where they can grow the mushroom logs so that they can produce these better. And this basically was an abandoned rice paddy fields converted into forest. Now, this may not be something very surprising, but policy-wise, converting rice paddy fields into forested land, it has been long not encouraged methods, or was not openly, I don't think, encouraged for a longer period, but they were doing these, I think, in the early 60s and 70s, 60s and 70s. So, and now some of the forests are, of course, facing difficulties in regenerating. For example, if they get too thick, too grown, then it's difficult to use as a mushroom logs. So they need natural regeneration, or they need to be harvested once in a while. Then they need this kind of a 15 to 20 years cycle in order for the production to continue. So the difficulty is the logs, the trees cannot wait. So either you have to continue the production or find other ways to harvest these timber and keep the size of the logs that is best for the production of the mushrooms. And they have a certain traditional ways to dry these logs. And this is one of the reasons why they are registered as GIAS. And now they're also utilizing national environmental forestry transfer tax to regenerate these kind of production cycle. This is the paper we just published last year on some of the land uses and forestation into the rice paddy fields. Yeah. Well, I was thinking this is more of a general discussion side, and I was just thinking there's a tacit knowledge and manualized knowledge, and there's a formal way of production and informal ways of channeling the knowledge. And probably GI is somewhere here. It's actually something that is traditional and tacit, but through the GI system, the knowledge becomes very often manualized, it moves upward here, and the informal or traditional things become more formal and market oriented in some cases, not every. So I was thinking maybe we could think about these different axes. Dr. Horie has presented something that is not very market oriented and not maybe so manualized or shared within the family members. I think Dr. Uchiyama's son's presentation was also, it's market, but not so shared. So it's an area somewhere here. Ikebana, I think it's very formal but more maybe not so shared openly, or I don't know. They're trying to maybe open up the knowledge and so on. This is something we had a Professor Sato from Kanazawa Gakuin University, and he has been analyzing. I'm sorry, it's in Japanese. He's talked about wine and different sake and things, and where people use these terroir kind of storytelling kind of ideas, or is it function? Is it if it's quality? So these kind of ideas we can also integrate into our discussion. Yeah. So sometimes knowledge is transmitted with strong ties, weak ties, or I don't know, tacit or manualized way. Traditional knowledge tends to be possibly with a stronger tie, family members, etc. But at the same time, if you limit to strong membership, sometimes it's not quite sustainable. So I think that's part of the challenge. So these are the acknowledgements. Thank you very much. Again,